Hi guys, thanks a lot for coming today, and I'm really sorry, I'm a very bad speaker, so I'll be reading from this. So I'm really honored to be with you today, and I just wanted to thank you for coming here and taking your time to listen to our stories. The first thing that I'd like to say is that we're just like you. Whatever feats of achievement you've heard today are attainable. All it takes is an inspiring moment of belief and hard work. So I'm 25 and I run 2 startups. The first is called AirClick and the second one is called GoFresh. My first foray into entrepreneurship started when I was 21. 4 years ago when I made the decision to quit law school and to start my first company. 20 years ago, my parents had migrated from Singapore to Sydney, and my brother Carl and I had decided to do the same, except this time we were coming back to Singapore. Like any young and relatively young person, we had this sort of ignorant optimism that if we had applied ourselves to something so intensely, spent so much time and effort building a business, sacrificing our social lives, we could achieve success. So we quit our lives behind and we pursued our dreams to build our business in Singapore, very much like the path that many of you are on now. We came back to Singapore in 2010 and it was just me and my brother, and we had moved into a tiny hostel room in Little India. We had nothing but our life savings. So we saved money by sleeping on the same queen-size bed and eating $2.50 chicken rice every day. It wasn't very romantic waking up next to your brother every morning. At 7 a.m., 7 days a week, we would wake up, we would walk to City Square Mall, and we would begin working as the aunties were setting up their stalls. And we would work all the way through until the mall closed at 10 p.m. We had just begun building our internet startup company called Be Economic. Now, my first story is about hard work. I remember when I was young, I was probably, for some of you, like your son or your younger brother or your friend, someone you knew. I had grown up in my parents' small printing company, and mornings before school, afternoons after school, even on the holidays, I would be working for my parents' printing business, learning how to fold, bind, staple, making books, brochures, business cards. By the age of 8, I was pretty much an expert in stationery. I was a frustrated young man, always questioning how working in my parents' printing company would help my future career. I would often think to myself as I was sleeping overnight in the office, as we often did, why does every other kid I know get to play with their video games or get to play with their friends while I have to work in my parents' shop? I learned later that my time spent with my parents taught me a priceless lesson in the importance of working hard. And as I saw their business grow, it made me realize that working hard was an important component if I wanted to be as successful as they were. None of my printing knowledge had even a hope of any practical application in my life. But 10 years later, when we were working 14 hours a day on weekdays and on weekends, it all came back to me. We worked harder than our competition, and it reflected in a better service and product. We were acquired by Groupon, and in 4 years, we grew that company from just the 2 of us in a tiny room in a hostel in Little India to a multi-million-dollar company with over 160 staff. Whenever there was an overload in orders or there was a shortage of staff, we would be there in the processing quarters, sometimes late into the night, organizing deliveries and orders. My second story is about rejection. It caused one of the biggest turning points of my life. When I had just started Be Economic, I was cocky, brash, and arrogant. Remember, I was a law student, so I guess a small part of my student brain had acquired the knowledge to be a lawyer. We would go to a mall and walk into each business and try to sign them up to give a discount to our customers. Now, I had followed my older brother to a few meetings, and I wanted to do one on my own. He nodded and agreed. fully aware that I would most probably publicly humiliate myself, but wise enough not to tell me. The optimism of youth is often underrated. I walked into a beer brewery. Actually, it's near City Hall MRT. It's not very far from here. I walked in with a clear purpose that this was going to be my first sale. Now, I had never done a pitch before, but like talking to girls at university, I thought I could just make things up and it would just flow. I came in, I gave a very unprepared pitch to the business owner, and before I could even finish, the business owner cut me off and he said, you come in here, you don't know my business, you don't know how I make my money, and you're asking for me to cut my prices? This meeting is over. You should leave right now. Now, I remember how crushed I felt. That's probably the worst rejection that I've ever received, and it happened in my very first sales meeting. I went home, and I just didn't want to leave my room. It was a very painful couple of hours as I questioned everything. But I knew this wasn't going to be an excuse for me to give up. I'm actually happy that I lost that meeting. When I grew up in Australia, I went to a very academic school, but we were one of the worst schools in sport. Every Saturday, I used to represent my school in rugby, and no matter the circumstances, rain or shine, we would always lose. Losing actually became a normal part of my Saturdays. It was kind of like a tradition. I would lose at rugby, I would go home, defeated, turn on the bath, and soak in my wounds. And in those hours, I actually got really excited about the next game because in every loss, there was some glimmer of hope that I could take away. You did a great run, or you kicked the ball really well. And that feeling of excitement that I might be able to turn the tide the next game made me a very happy loser. So every Saturday, I would be on the fields, fully knowing that I would lose, but optimistic that the number of points that we would lose by might just be reduced a little bit this time round. So I went back out there, and after a few more sales meetings, I learned what worked and what didn't work. I made sure I was more prepared, more composed, and more focused on figuring out how we could help the business owner. What I learned from this is that don't let potential setbacks bog you down. Rejection is a normal part of challenging the status quo. Instead, push ahead with your list of things to achieve, dig deeper, and truly find out how you can be better. We all carry negative thoughts and doubts in our mind. Instead of spending too much time dwelling on them, turn them over and move on. You can't afford to use too much of your time and energy putting yourself down. And soon I began to love sales and client meetings, and I've always remembered the mistakes that I made in that first meeting. And for some of you who will be successful later in life, or even now, you're all on the path to success, don't rest on your laurels. Always set your sights on new goals because life is a marathon and not just a sprint. Anxiety will always be a part of your life, but you should try to channel that nervous energy into something productive. Having said that, it's always good to keep your sense of humor about you. That's what will keep you going in the darkest of times. My next story is about success. I was lucky. After one meeting with Groupon, our company, Be Economic, was acquired, and we achieved what we had set out to do, beating all other 32 competitors. By completely focusing on the business, by putting our social lives on hold, and by fighting desperately to become better and better, we had made it. How can two guys from a hostel in Little India become the poster boys for internet entrepreneurs? Here's what I think. You have to set high expectations of yourself and not compromise and not give up. Sometimes you just have to outlast certain periods of your life. You might find yourself on the brink of despair, or you don't have any time or money to spend with friends or do the things that you want. but you just need to outlast this period. Don't give up and don't give in. And most importantly, don't be a quitter to your own inner voice. If you're determined to succeed and you're willing to grow along the way, you'll eventually get what it is that you want. When you're starting a business, understand that you will make a lot of sacrifices, and it will hurt to be an entrepreneur. I'm 25, and unlike my friends who are partying or trying new restaurants or Instagramming their food relentlessly, I am working 7 days a week, sometimes through the night. And I don't party because I'm focused on my business. I don't stay up late because I want to be focused in the morning. I will be the last person in my company to ever make a salary, and you'll face situations where you'll be stretched to your limits. But that's taught me the importance of keeping the faith. You have to trust in something, your gut, your destiny, life, God, or whatever. Because it's usually in the darkest of times that life will give you the breakthrough that you so need. I try to be grateful for the little things. My focus has always been on customer experience, so a satisfied customer is all it takes to remind me that the struggle is worth it. Back to my story. So at 24, I left Groupon, which was the company that I'd spent 4 years of my life building. I was out, and what had been the focus of my entire adult life was gone, and I was completely devastated. My company was a big part of my life. It was who I stood for, and now I was an outsider. I really didn't know what to do for a few months. The heaviness of success had disabled me from properly pursuing any new ventures. Like my very first sales meeting, I didn't want to leave my room. What had started in my mind as an opportunity to try something new had completely backfired on me, and had instead left me without drive or motivation. But leaving Groupon allowed me to completely reassess myself, and over a few months, I realized that I genuinely loved creating experiences for people, and I wanted to fight for another chance to build another startup. Leaving Groupon freed me to become a little bit less sure of myself so that I could try something new instead of stagnating in a comfortable job. And I honestly believe that it's through leaving Groupon and going through this hardship that I was able to find out what I really love doing, and that's startups. Change is a very good thing. It can unsettle you for a period of time, but it can open your eyes to a completely different way of thinking. My last story is about the why. This, I believe, is the most important question in life because everything resonates from the why. Why is it that you do what you do? Is it because deep down you want to become better, or you want to become different, or you want to prove something to yourself? In business, it's even more important that you answer the why. You're going to have to answer this question not only to your partners, but to your potential investors, but also to every one of your customers, and most importantly, to yourself. Understanding the why and having it flow through every part of your business will set your company apart from your competitors. The truth about entrepreneurship is that it's a lonely and hard path because you're the only one who's responsible for its success. I'm sorry, I know that's really hard news to take, but it's true. Everything develops from the work and the attitude that the founders impart. Your company's culture will reflect the way you approach work, and it will show on every part of your business, from your service or your product through to the way that you interact with your customers. In my early days, I was desperately fighting to survive because my life savings was on the line. And in hindsight, feeling that desperation made me ensure that I was making the best out of every situation. Reminding myself that I might be broke or become a failure is one of life's greatest fears that we all share. But somehow, when you take that leap and become an entrepreneur, it can become one of your greatest motivators or drivers. And finally, on attitude, you have to get yourself out of the employee mindset and start approaching things from a business owner's mindset. Now, what that means is not thinking about how much of your time that you're spending on your business, but instead thinking about the value of the work that you're contributing to your company in the long term. And most importantly, these are the principles that I live by. Be kind in everything that you do. Set yourself up with integrity. Build your credibility and be someone who is trustworthy. Thank you.